Maps will let you find where construction is taking place now and in the months ahead, and you can even set up email notifications. Find more info on SDOT's blog or access dot maps at streetwork.seattle.gov/map.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Av Radio.
Hello, you're listening to the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Kendra.
And I'm Asher.
Today is Monday, January 4th. The news on Rainier Avenue Radio is live every Monday from 6 to 6:30 p.m., providing you with current, trustworthy, useful news content focused on super service to the local South Seattle audience. We will not tell you what to think, but instead provide the basics for you to discern and decide for yourself. Tonight, we'll talk about a crab recall, spoiled vaccinations and mutating DNA, Iranian uranium, and Curry crushing the Blazers. Now, onto the local news. To start with some good news, Washington had the third lowest rate of average daily COVID-19 cases in the country as of Sunday, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The only states to report lower average daily cases per 100,000 over the past week were Vermont and Hawaii. Puerto Rico also had a lower rate. Washington sat at 18.8 cases per 100,000, down from 26.5 from the previous week. The top state, California, sat at 98.8 cases per 100,000. Last week, Tennessee had the highest rate of cases per 100,000 over the past 7 days. Washington's numbers have been trending down since daily cases rocketed up at the beginning of November through the beginning of December. The state's average number of daily cases hit its peak at over 3,000 on December 4th, the Seattle PI reports. Also, King County is starting 2021 with plans to buy as many as a dozen hotels to permanently house hundreds of people and provide them with services. The initiative is called Health Through Housing, and it uses revenue from a 0.1 sales tax increase to develop a network of apartment-like shelters, with the goal of getting people out of tents, off of sidewalks, and into safe, clean homes. The goal for 2021 is to create housing units for 1,500 people county-wide in former hotels and nursing homes throughout the county, King 5 reports. Leo Floor, director of the King County Department of Community and Human Services, said hotel owners are already approaching the county and offering their properties, which are struggling to fill rooms since the pandemic. A new Washington law imposed a $100 cap on patient copayments. Per Cairo 7, the law applies to any health care plan issued or renewed after January 1st that covers insulin drugs. It includes language that protects people who have quote-unquote high deductible insurance from paying more than $100 per 30-day supply. Over 600,000 people in Washington state have diabetes, and a little over 200,000 rely on insulin. Diabetes is also a potential risk factor for COVID-19 complications. The law was approved by the legislature in March to ease a crisis that can lead to medical complications. Studies show an estimated 1/4 of patients ration the medication because of cost or difficulty obtaining steady supplies. The copay cap lasts through 2021 and 2022. Many hope state lawmakers can come up with a long-term cost solutions for consumers before the cap is set to expire. Nearly 29 tons of Dungeness crabs is being voluntarily recalled by the Quinault tribe. According to Cairo 7, the recall affects live and uneviscerated Dungeness crab. The crabs are being recalled due to possible elevated marine toxin levels. The toxin is called domic acid, which can be harmful to people if the contaminated shellfish are consumed. Symptoms can include vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, and abdominal cramps, which can start within 24 hours of consumption. The crab was caught by the tribe from December 23rd to the 28th and sold to food processors in Washington. Everyone who purchased the crabs is being advised to destroy the product and contact the place where it was purchased. Sound Transit canceled Monday's North Line service after a weekend mudslide was reported between the Mukilteo and Edmond stations. Per Como News, the mudslide followed a stormy weekend that dumped several inches of precipitation in the area. A cold front ushered in a strong storm to parts of Puget Sound Saturday, drenching several areas of the state and causing several accidents along Interstate 90. The northbound service is expected to resume on Tuesday, January 5th. The agency said commuters could consider using regularly scheduled bus service while the train service was suspended. Several storms are set to bring in more heavy rain and mountain snow through at least Wednesday. Per Patch.com, the latest round of rain follows a weekend flood watch for most of western Washington, and area rivers are likely to rise further in the coming days. The Suquamish remains the most likely to flood, but the added precipitation is likely to push other rivers closer to the flood stage. An elevated risk for landslides will persist through at least Thursday at elevations below 3,000 feet due to saturated ground from recent storms. A special weather statement cautioned that additional rainfall could create more instability in the days ahead. Forecasters expect drier conditions will move in after Wednesday, lending to some sporadic showers but less of a downpour than earlier in the week. And lastly, in local news, coronavirus outbreaks have impacted workers at grocery stores all over Washington state, and the union representing those workers wants to see them get vaccinated as soon as possible because they face potential exposure to the virus on a regular basis. Grocery store workers are currently listed in Group 1B to be vaccinated with other essential workers. Healthcare workers and residents and workers in long-term care facilities make up the first groups to get the vaccine. A statement provided to King 5 on this issue from Kroger on behalf of QFC and Fred Meyer Groceries in Washington read, quote, "We will continue to advocate for our associates and follow the guidance provided by the state and local government in regards to the vaccine," unquote. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we return with national news, we'll talk about squirrel vaccinations and mutated DNA and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the national news. The campaign to vanquish the coronavirus is picking up speed. The government officials say that the pace of vaccinations has accelerated markedly after a disappointingly slow start. Dr. Anthony Fauci said over the weekend that 1.5 million shots were dispensed over 72 hours, bringing the running total to about 4 million. As states brace for a coronavirus surge following holiday gatherings, our state houses have begun to stand out as potential super spreaders. Associated Press data shows more than 230 state lawmakers across the country have contracted COVID-19 and at least 7 have died. The 7-day rolling average for daily new deaths in the U.S. rose slightly over the past 2 weeks to 2,637 on January 3rd, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. The number of COVID-19 related deaths in the U.S. stands at 351,590. New York State will begin finding hospitals that do not administer allotted COVID-19 vaccines within a week of receiving their supplies and will decline to provide them with further doses. Per Reuters, U.S. federal government has distributed more than 13 million vaccine doses to states and territories around the country. However, only 4 million have actually been administered. Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has refused to vaccinate a vaccine for himself until BIPOC and poorer communities in his state get it first, told reporters, quote, "I don't want the vaccine in a fridge or a freezer. I want it in somebody's arm. If you're not performing this function, it does raise questions about the operating efficiency of the hospital." Earlier today, New York found its first case of the more contagious, quote-unquote, UK strain of the virus, raising concerns about threats to hospital capacity should it spread rapidly in the state. In a recorded call, President Trump urged Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a fellow Republican, to overturn the state's presidential election result. Per NPR, Trump appeared at least partly to blame Raffensperger for what could be lower turnout in Tuesday's runoff elections, which will decide control to the U.S. Senate. More than 3 million Georgians have already voted in the two January 5th runoffs, which pit incumbent Republican Senator David Perdue against Democrat John Ossoff and incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler against Democrat Raphael Warnock. An attorney for the Secretary of State's office told the president on the call that state investigators, law enforcement, and the courts looked into claims of illegal votes and found no evidence of widespread fraud that would overturn Trump's narrow laws. However, Trump told Raffensperger he wanted to, quote-unquote, find 11,780 votes, presumably to flip the state for a Republican victory. Walmart is facing a public reckoning over its role in the nation's deadly opioid epidemic. Per NPR, the crisis killed about 450,000 Americans from 1999 to 2018. The Justice Department, along with state and local governments, are suing the retail giant, claiming Walmart shipped and sold billions of highly addictive pills without proper safeguards. The company said it acted responsibly, but former pharmacists have come forward with a different story. They say prescriptions weren't filled out properly, and physicians' signatures sometimes appear to be printed by a computer. One former pharmacist said that when he tried to reach doctors to find out what was happening, he often couldn't get them on the phone. The same pharmacist was later fired for what he claimed was retribution for notifying the police and DEA about the issue. Other pharmacists complained that dangerous, quote-unquote, pill mill doctors were sending patients to Walmart after other chains stopped filing their opioid prescriptions. Pharmacists sent emails to Walmart executives saying they feared losing their licenses and their jobs because of opioid sales. A U.S. agency screened 500 million fewer people at U.S. airport checkpoints in 2020. Per Reuters, this was down 61% over 2019 amid a sharp slowdown in air traffic demand because of the coronavirus pandemic. The TSA said it screened 324 million passengers throughout its airport security checkpoints in 2020, down from 824 million screened in 2019. In recent weeks, travel has rebounded slightly. On Sunday, TSA screened 1.327 million people at airport checkpoints, the highest number screened since mid-March, but still down 45% over the same day in 2020. More than 200 employees and contractors at Alphabet Incorporated in the US and Canada have formed a labor union, a very rare feat in the tech industry, to promote workplace equity and ethical business practices. The quote-unquote Alphabet Workers Union will collect dues of 1% of total compensation from members, according to its website. Funds will cover paid organizers, events, legal support, and wages for members in the event of a labor strike. The group's formation builds on unprecedented protests by Google workers in recent years, Reuters reports. While the tech industry has seen minimal union activity and worker pushback historically, thousands of people at Alphabet have banded together to publicly criticize Google's handling of sexual assault harassment complaints, its work with the U.S. military, and other issues. A Wisconsin pharmacist convinced the world was, quote-unquote, crashing down, told police he tried to ruin hundreds of doses of coronavirus vaccines because he believed the shots would mutate people's DNA, according to court documents released Monday. police in Grafton, about 20 miles north of Milwaukee, arrested Advocate Aurora health pharmacist Stephen Brandenburg last week following an investigation into the 57 spoiled vials of the Moderna vaccine, which officials say contained enough doses to inoculate more than 500 people. Charges are pending, the AP reports. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with global news, you'll hear about Iranian uranium and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the global news. Some EU specialist online retailers have said they will no longer deliver to the UK because of tax changes which came into force on January 1st. Per BBC News, VAT is now being collected at the point of sale rather than at the point of importation, a change that HMRC says will ensure that goods from the EU and non-EU countries are treated in the same way. This essentially means that overseas retailers sending goods to the UK are expected to register for UK VAT and account for it to HMRC if the value is less than €150 or £135. Companies are angry because they now face higher costs and increased bureaucracy in order to comply with UK tax authorities. However, it is unclear how many have taken the drastic step of refusing all UK orders. At the same time, international shipping companies, including Federal Express and TNT, have said they are levying additional charges on shipments between the UK and the EU. They said this reflected the increased investment they had to make in order to adjust their systems to cope with Brexit. The battle over Julian Assange's future kicked into overdrive after a British judge ruled that WikiLeaks founder should not be extradited to the United States to face espionage charges. But the decision is unlikely to be the final word in the case. The legal fight is expected to intensify as U.S. prosecutors indicated they will appeal and now have a 2-week window to do so. This could see the UK Supreme Court and even the European Court of Human Rights forced to make judgments. The charges set by U.S. officials carry a maximum prison sentence of 175 years, Al Jazeera reports. Peru's President Francisco Sagasti has promised to take action against police, quote, who violated the ban on use of firearms, unquote, after 3 people, including a 16-year-old boy, died last week during protests by farm workers against a contentious new agricultural law. Per Al Jazeera, the clashes broke out between demonstrators and police, who dispersed a roadblock on the country's main coastal road through the La Libertad, a farming community about 370 miles north of the capital, Lima. The country's ombudsman's office said 2 protesters died of gunshot wounds at the blockade, while a 56-year-old man with cancer died on a vehicle stranded by the protest. Television images showed police using tear gas and birdshot against demonstrators. Officials said 28 protesters and 15 police officers were injured, while 45 workers were arrested. South Korea recorded more deaths than births in 2020 for the first time ever, raising fresh alarm in the country, which already has the world's lowest birth rate. Per BBC News, only 275,800 babies were born last year, down 10% from 2019. Around 307,764 people died. A declining population puts immense strain on the country. Apart from increased pressure on public spending as demand for healthcare systems and pensions rise, a declining youth population also leads to labor shortages that have a direct impact on the economy. The biggest reason for this is likely because women struggle to achieve a balance between work and other life demands. Women are expected to raise the children. However, having a single income household isn't always financially feasible. Also, soaring real estate prices count as another major factor. Many are unconvinced by the incentives offered by the government, which they say don't provide enough relief. The battle over Julian Assange's future. Sorry about that. Iran has resumed enriching uranium to 20% purity in its most significant breach yet of 2014 nuclear deal with world powers. Per BBC News, enriched uranium can be used to make reactor fuel, but also nuclear bombs. Weapons-grade uranium is 90% purity. Iran, which insists that its nuclear program is peaceful, has rolled back a number of commitments under the deal. It has said it is retaliating for the U.S. economic sanctions that were reinstated in 2019 by President Trump when he abandoned the accord, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. They also see South Korean flag tanker near the crucial Strait of Hormuz today, issuing a double-barreled challenge which appeared aimed at increasing Tehran's leverage in the waning days of Trump's presidency. Saudi Arabia will reopen its airspace and land and sea border to Qatar as of Monday, Kuwait's foreign minister said, citing a deal towards resolving a political dispute that led Riyadh and its allies to impose a boycott on Qatar. In a statement, the Kuwait's foreign minister said that the Kuwaiti emirs had spoken with Qatar's emir and Saudi Arabia's crown prince. In June 2017, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt accused Qatar, among other things, of supporting terrorism and being too close to Iran, severing economic and diplomatic ties. They also imposed a land, sea, and air blockade on Qatar. Kuwait has been mediating talks between Qatar and 4 Arab states, Al Jazeera reports. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with sports news, we'll talk about Curry crushing the Blazers and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the sports news. Russell Wilson connected on 2 fourth-quarter touchdown passes to Tyler Lockett, and the Seattle Seahawks rallied for a 26-23 win over the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday to end the season on a 4-game winning streak. Per Como News, Seattle, 12-4, had a chance to earn the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs, but stayed at number 3 after the New Orleans Saints and top-seeded Green Bay Packers won both. The Seahawks will host the division rival Los Angeles Rams in the wild card round next weekend. The Seahawks got their first touchdown when Russell Wilson avoided pressure and hit Lockett for a diving 6-yard touchdown in the back of the end zone. Jason Myers missed the extra point, and the Seahawks trailed 16-12. Seattle forced the 49ers to punt on the ensuing possession and then methodically marched 85 yards on 14 plays and scored the go-ahead touchdown on 4th down on Wilson's 4-yard throw to Lockett. Wilson finished 20 of 36 passing for 171 yards. Lockett had 12 catches for 90 yards. You can hear a more thorough breakdown of Sunday's game tonight on Monday Night Sports. CNN reports former Denver Broncos running back Floyd Little, who played his entire 9-year NFL career with the Broncos, having been selected 6th in the 1967 NFL draft, died Friday at the age of 78. His family's statement reads, quote, "After nearly a year confronting, even battling cancer, the beloved hero, brother, uncle, grandfather, father, and husband, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Denver Bronco and Syracuse number 44 legend Floyd D. Little ran his last mile, gracefully bowed his head, and met his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ." Meanwhile, the Jaguars fired coach Doug Marrone in a little more than 12 hours after ending the season with a 15th consecutive loss. It was a move many thought owner Shad Khan should have made at the end of the 2019 season, but Khan gave Marrone another chance to make Jacksonville a playoff contender for the second time in 4 years. Mayfield threw a touchdown pass and had several big runs in the second half as the Browns made the playoffs for the first time since 2002 on Sunday, surviving a late Mason Rudolph-led rally to beat the rival Steelers, who sat quarterback Ben Roethlisberger and several other starters. Per AP, after nearly 2 decades of dysfunction, bad draft picks, coaching changes, and front office purges, the Browns, who went 0-16 in 2017, are still playing in 2021. A week of COVID-19 disruptions concluded in celebration as the Browns wrapped up their big reward, a 3rd matchup this season against the AFC North champions Steelers in Pittsburgh next Sunday night. Curry let it fly from way out under pressure with a minute left for another perfect swish on the way to a career-high 62 points, and the Golden State Warriors beat Portland 137-122 on Sunday night to split the two-game set with the Trailblazers. Curry delivered the highest scoring game in the NBA this season early in his 12th campaign, finishing 18 for 31 and 8 of 16 on three-pointers after beginning with a 21-point first quarter, The Guardian reports. Quote, "When you have something to be excited about, you kind of feed off your own energy," said Curry, who said the great ones learn how to block out the critics and embrace expectations. The NCAA announced that all 67 men's basketball tournament games, including the Final Four, will be played entirely in Indiana. Per Como News, it's a bid to keep the marquee event from being called off for a second consecutive year because of the coronavirus pandemic. Games will be played one at a time on two courts instead of Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the NFL's Indianapolis Colts. They will also be held at Bankers Life Field, Hinkle Fieldhouse, Indiana Farmers Coliseum, Mackey Arena at Purdue, and Assembly Hall in Bloomington. Championship weekend is still scheduled for April 3rd and April 5th, but preliminary round dates have not yet been determined. Still to be determined is how many fans will be allowed inside the venues. Oregon's run in the top 10 of the Associated Press Women's College Basketball Poll is over after 64 consecutive appearances. Per ESPN, the Ducks fell to number 11 in the AP Top 25, released a day after the team's 27-game winning streak ended with a 2-point loss and then number 11 UCLA. Oregon entered the top 25 at number 11 in the 2017 to 2018 preseason poll and moved up a spot in the first regular season poll that year. The Ducks hadn't fallen below 10th until today, climbing as high as number 1 for a few weeks last year. It was the fourth longest active streak behind UConn, Baylor, and Louisville. The Huskies have been in the top 10 of every poll since March 7th, 2005. The Lady Bears have done it since December 8th, 2014, and Louisville started its run in the preseason poll of 2017 to 2018.
Now it's time to go over tonight's show plugs. After this, Monday Night Sports is going to break down the latest Seahawks game and more, hosted by Rick Dupree and Seahawks legend Edwin Bailey.
And after that, host Granville Emerson, Pepe, and Lil O will be talking about the latest news in the NFL, NBA, and sports stories on Lidline Sports live Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio. Call in with your thoughts and opinions on the live RAR hotline at 206-290-9685. That's 206-290-9685.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you Wednesday.